Chapter 2185. No one knew how much they wanted to stand by Luo Qingtong's side and block all the wind, frost, sword, and rain for her. They wanted to tell everyone in this world that they weren't trash. They weren't burdens by Luo Qingtong's side. They cultivated with all their might, not fearing danger, not fearing hardship, not fearing death. It was for nothing else but to be able to stay by Luo Qingtong's side. Now they did it. Everyone was laughing and jumping, almost unable to control themselves. Su Xiaoxiao, little tyrant Yuan, and the others were so excited that they hugged each other. The joy in their hearts at this moment made them unable to feel the pain of their bodies turning into white bones. The people from Xuanhuan sect were also pleasantly surprised. They couldn't help but look in Luo Qingtong's direction. The girl's reversal was too shocking. They really thought that Luo Qingtong was dead for sure. They didn't expect her to have such a move. The group of people from Xuanhuan sect didn't know how Luo Qingtong managed to complete the contract in an instant. But this didn't stop them from feeling happy. Luo Qingtong's contract was successful and her strength increased. The beast tamer King Gu Guzhu and those people from the sects were dead for sure. And the people from Xuanhuan sect were celebrating. It was the end of those people from the sections. They looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong and the others. Their faces were as if they had lost their parents and they kept retreating. Run! They screamed at the top of their lungs, then turned around and ran. If there was a chance, these people from the sects wouldn't run away without dignity. But the beast tamer King Gu Guzhu was easily sent flying by Luo Qingtong. None of them caught him when they went to catch him. Under such circumstances, how could they dare to stay and deal with Luo Qingtong? The other party was simply an inhuman, an evildoer, a monster. After giving Luo Qingtong a bunch of definitions in their hearts, the group turned and ran. However, the people from Xuanhuan sect had long had enough of their sufferings. It wasn't easy for the situation to turn around. How could they let these people from the sects escape? Immediately all of them were stopped. This time the tables had turned. Previously they were the ones who desperately blocked the people from Xuanhuan sect. Now it was the people from Xuanhuan sect's turn to attack them. Under the attacks of the people from Xuanhuan sect, the people from the other sects desperately fled left and right. But the people from Xuanhuan sect had hope and hope. How could they let them go? They immediately used 120% of their strength to stop them on the spot. After all, Luo Qingtong's side, House. Your injuries is? Luo Qingtong looked at the injuries of Su Yu and Su Xiaoxiao. The latter's SSS, the power of the medicinal liquid Su Xiaoxiao concocted is constantly corroding and invading their bodies, turning them into white bones. Su Xiaoxiao, little tyrant Yuan, and the others were almost half skeletons. But when Luo Qingtong asked them, they grinned and said, "It's okay, boss. We're fine." Little tyrant Yuan raised his hand to pat his chest, only to find that his limbs had all turned into white bones. He couldn't even lift them. Luo Qingtong looked at them. The bloody light in her eyes surged fiercely, but in the end she didn't say anything. There was no need to say anything more. Chapter 2186. Luo Qingtong nodded at them, then used her blood-red eyes to analyze the composition of Su Xiaoxiao's concoction. Soon, she finished concocting the antidote and gave it to little Overlord Yuan and the others. At the same time, she used the power of the life blade to replenish their vitality and vitality. Su Xiaoxiao and the others almost lost half of their lives this time. If they couldn't replenish their vitality, even if they took the antidote, they would be plagued with illness in the future, and their bodies would be extremely weak. Fortunately, the power of Luo Qingtong's life blade was specially used to replenish vitality. Very quickly, the life force that they had lost was replenished. At the same time, Luo Qingtong plucked a leaf from the ancient heavenly spirit tree and gave it to them. She told them to wait until the right time to consume it. It would be best to consume it when they were breaking through. This way the awakened soul imprint would be stronger. Su Xiaoxiao and the others complied, then sat down to meditate and recover their vitality. Su Yu and the others' internal injuries were also healed by Luo Qingtong. She also gave the blood-colored immortal jade bones that she had obtained before to Su Yu and the others. She told them to hold on to them so that they could break through in the future. Those blood-colored immortal jade bones had already been refined by Luo Qingtong when they were in the Shattered Star Valley. Because the ancient heavenly spirit tree had absorbed a lot of death energy and evil energy from the immortal jade bones, its growth was also very fast. Now it already had more than 30 leaves. Luo Qingtong let Little Pig take it to stroll around the area, purifying and picking up all the immortal jade bones among the white bones. With so many immortal jade bones, it was enough for the ancient heavenly spirit tree to grow more leaves. At that time, Luo Qingtong would leave behind some essential leaves, and give the rest to Su Yu and the others. When Little Pig heard this, he immediately agreed to it. He had been scared to death just now. Luo Qingtong was still fine. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. He urgently needed to do something to calm himself down. It was good to pick up treasures. Just as Little Pig was about to leave, Luo Qingtong shifted her gaze back to beast tamer King Guguju. The latter was lying on the ground, coughing up blood. He tried his best to get up, but he couldn't. Luo Qingtong's kick was not a random one. The pain Su Yu and the others had suffered at the hands of the beast tamer King Guguju, she wanted him to return it 1,000 times over. How is it? Comfortable? Luo Qingtong looked indifferent. She sneered as she looked at the figure of the beast tamer King Guguju in front of her and slowly walked over. Isn't it great? When you dealt with my people before, did you also have such a look of absolute control over their lives? Luo Qingtong smiled. The young girl's face was absolutely beautiful. When she smiled, it was as if she was radiating a dazzling light. Her beauty was indescribable and her charm could topple cities. However, the depths of her eyes were very cold. His blood-red eyes were like ice-cold flames as they flickered. She walked in front of the beast tamer King Guguju. She lowered her head and looked at him, then stepped on his hand. Beast tamer King Guguju screamed miserably. Luo Qingtong directly crushed his other hand into meat paste. Sorry, I couldn't control my temper. Luo Qingtong looked at the beast tamer King Guguju with a smile. She raised her hand and brushed a strand of hair behind her head. You probably don't know. Luo Qingtong looked indifferent. I hate it when people touch my things. Don't even think about it, touching my people. Luo Qingtong said. The smile on her face became even more evil. Chapter 2187. Luo Qingtong's voice rang out. Instantly, beast tamer King Guguju screamed shrilly. Luo Qingtong, don't be so smug. Perhaps because he knew he was going to die, beast tamer King Guguju threw caution to the wind. He looked at Luo Qingtong with a twisted and strange smile. So what if you kill me? The leader of the Star Alliance is still waiting outside. As he spoke, he laughed coldly. If we obtain the treasures in this forbidden area, perhaps we can still escape from his hands, or perhaps we can even preserve our lives from his hands. But you. He looked at Luo Qingtong with disdain and laughed loudly. You can only be killed by the people of the Star Alliance. Bitch. Ah. Beast tamer King Guguju laughed loudly, his heart filled with unspeakable joy and pride. So what if he died? Luo Qingtong, that bitch, would still come to accompany him in the end. At that time he would wait for Luo Qingtong, that bitch, in the underground. Luo Qingtong looked at his smug and arrogant expression and suddenly raised her eyebrows. Is that so? Luo Qingtong looked at him and said carelessly, someone beside me didn't come in here. Not only that, but several people beside him also didn't come in here. Can you guess why? Beast tamer King Guguju's eyes widened at Luo Qingtong's words. Yo. He looked at Luo Qingtong in shock and then suddenly remembered that he didn't see the masked man beside her in the land of the deceased immortals. That mysterious masked man was very powerful. If he was in the land of the deceased immortals, he wouldn't be able to deal with Luo Qingtong. But the masked man didn't appear. Why was that? If not for Luo Qingtong's words, even if beast tamer King Guguju thought of this, he wouldn't think too much about it. But now, after hearing Luo Qingtong's words, he couldn't help but think of a terrible idea. He's from outside the domain. He's from outside the domain, right? Beast tamer King Guguju instantly went crazy. Someone from outside the domain? The masked man was actually from outside the domain. And there was no news of that man in the hidden world, and he came from the secular world with Luo Qingtong. Beast tamer King Gu was very clear about what this meant. This meant that the other party didn't need to go through the stargate that connected the hidden world to the outside world. They could easily break through the barrier and reach the secular world. That was why the people of the hidden world knew nothing about him. Thinking of this, beast tamer King Guguju's heart trembled with indescribable madness. The masked man beside Luo Qingtong actually had such a background. While beast tamer King Guguju's heart went crazy and was in disbelief, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly twitched. Alright, you already know what you need to know. You can die peacefully now. Also, the corners of Luo Qingtong's lips curled up, and her expression was indescribably indifferent. Since you don't want to choose a way to die, then I'll choose for you. Luo Qingtong basically didn't want to talk so much nonsense. But if she could let beast tamer King Guguju die with remaining grievances, she was still willing to talk a little more nonsense. While speaking, Luo Qingtong waved her hand. In an instant, several figures were dragged over by her. Chapter 2188. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she released the power that bound those figures. In an instant, those figures pounced towards beast tamer King Guguju. Ah! When he saw Luo Qingtong dragging those figures over, beast tamer King Guguju's eyes widened. These people were none other than the beast-taming King Valley's Valley Master. They were the ones who had turned the beast-taming King Valley's elders into mindless monsters. These people had been fed the immortal jade bone and mutated in front of beast-tamer King Guguju and the others. Afterwards, they were thrown to Su Yu and the others to deal with the great Yongzheng corpse puppet. Now that Luo Qingtong had dragged them over, they could deal with beast-tamer King Guguju. Naturally, only beast-tamer King Guguju could reap the fruits of his own actions. Ah! Beast-tamer King Guguju screamed miserably. At this moment, his aura was sealed by Luo Qingtong just like Su Yu and the others. When those mutated beast-tamer King Valley elders rushed over, he was unable to resist. At this moment, Luo Qingtong temporarily removed the influence in the minds of those mutated beast-tamer King Valley elders, allowing them to regain some of their consciousness. Under such circumstances, these beast-tamer King Valley elders looked at beast-tamer King Guguju as if they wished they could chew on his bones and eat his flesh. They madly rushed towards beast-tamer King Guguju. Using their mutated tentacles and sharp thorns, they ruthlessly pierced into Guguju's body, sweeping him up and tearing him apart bit by bit. A group of people rushed over, desperately gnawing at his body and flesh. Beast-tamer King Guguju struggled with all his might, but he couldn't use any strength. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. Instead, it stimulated those mutated beast-tamer King Valley elders, who tore and gnawed at him even more crazily. Those miserable screams mixed with the sound of chewing continued to ring out, causing one's hair to stand on end. The people from the other sects who had tried their best to escape but had been stopped by the people from the Heavenly Yuan sect turned around and saw this scene. Immediately, many of them were so frightened that they cried and knelt down, begging Luo Qingtong to spare their lives. The girl stood in the center of the forbidden zone, her face cold. "Kneel down and swear that you will be my slaves forever, and I will spare your lives." For Luo Qingtong, anyone who tried to kill her was unforgivable. However, most of the experts from the sects in the hidden world were here. If Luo Qingtong killed all of these people, she would have to face the mess of the hidden world in the future. On the contrary, it was not beautiful. It was better to have these people submit, swear to be slaves and never betray him. This way she could save a lot of trouble. Hearing Luo Qingtong's words, the faces of many sects people stiffened. Swearing to be a slave forever meant that he would be Luo Qingtong's slave for the rest of his life. Not only that, he would not be free even after death. In the future, when he reincarnated, he would still have to be Luo Qingtong's slave. Many people hesitated. At this moment, Luo Qingtong waved her hand indifferently. "Kill?" Su Yu and the others had already recovered their strength. Hearing this, they immediately jumped up, brought their contracted beasts, and started to kill with the people from the Heavenly Yuan sect. Seeing this, the people from the other sects were instantly scared out of their wits. Those who were still hesitating before saw Su Yu and the others rushing over and remembered that this was the land of the fallen immortals. Once they died here, their consciousness and soul might be completely left here in the future, not to mention the afterlife. Thinking of this, the crowd immediately swore. Luo Qingtong looked at them and raised her eyebrows. Just as she was about to say something, suddenly... Chapter 2189. Chirp chirp chirp. There was a slight sound, and then a small figure appeared in front of Luo Qingtong like a flash of lightning. "Paji." The moment the figure appeared, Luo Qingtong subconsciously slapped it. In an instant, the little thing was slapped to the ground, and it fell with a loud thud. Oh, wah. Before Luo Qingtong could react, she saw a small white ball on the ground looking at her with a pout. Then it started to cry. Chirp 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 chirp. Luo Qingtong looked at it jumping on the ground with tears in its eyes. She didn't know what it was complaining about, and her lips twitched. "This is..." She looked at the little thing and saw that it was round and looked like a ball. There was a small tuft of something on its head that she didn't know if it was fur or a mark. She suddenly reached out to touch it curiously. "You are... that... sector beast?" Luo Qingtong held the last two words in her mouth, but she didn't say them out loud. In this forbidden area, there was such a small, round, chubby thing, and it seemed to be a newborn beast. Other than the sector beast in the ball of light, Luo Qingtong couldn't think of anything else. However, this sector beast was actually like this? Luo Qingtong looked at the little thing that was crying so hard that its tears almost piled up into a small pond. Her lips twitched even more. She raised her hand to touch the soft little thing, then saw it pout and cry even harder. She couldn't help but raise her hand to support her forehead. This was the sector beast? The treasure that the great beings from other regions had risked their lives to get here? Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. She suddenly felt like her heart was disillusioned. What happened to being so domineering? It was so soft and crybaby, and it was so small. It didn't match the domineering and powerful aura it had shown when it was about to be born. Luo Qingtong didn't know what to say. She looked at the huge ball of light behind her. The latter had already shattered into several pieces. Streams of origin aura emanated from it. Obviously this little fellow was that sector beast. There was no doubt about it. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched as she thought about it. Right after she completed the contract, she was busy dealing with the beast tamer King Guguju. He did not pay too much attention to this small sector beast. The latter did not come out immediately after completing the contract with her. Did he just come out after absorbing the energy from the light ball? Luo Qingtong looked at the little dumpling on the ground. The latter was also looking at her. Seeing that she had no intention of comforting it, it suddenly jumped towards Luo Qingtong. This time Luo Qingtong didn't send it flying. That little ball rushed into Luo Qingtong's arms and rubbed against her chest pitifully. Then it blinked a pair of big eyes and looked at her. She looked both aggrieved and pitiful. There was even a hint of anticipation in his voice. Luo Qingtong looked at its eyes and said uncertainly, "Do you want me to hug you?" She reached out and picked it up. After being picked up by her, the latter was so happy that it jumped up and down. Its big, cute eyes narrowed into slits, looking like crescent moons. It was very cute. Obviously it wanted Luo Qingtong to hug it. Chapter 2190. The corners of Luo Qingtong's lips twitched slightly. It turned out that this little guy was here to ask for kisses, hugs and hugs. It was also here to complain about how she had bullied it. This was really... Luo Qingtong felt that the image of the sector beast in her mind had been completely destroyed. Speaking of which, among her pets, Snowball was the only one who looked like a divine beast. The rest were Little Pig, this sector beast, and that gold-seeking hamster. They were all a bunch of adorable fools. They did not have any powerful aura at all. As Luo Qingtong thought about this, the corners of her lips twitched again. At this moment, the little ball jumped out of her arms and hopped toward the place where the huge light shell had broken. Chirp, chirp, chirp. It hopped on the huge light shell fragments and chirped toward Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong looked at it and immediately walked over. "What are you trying to do?" Luo Qingtong looked at it and thought for a while. Then she asked, "Do you want me to take them away?" She watched as xuanhuan bounced around on the fragments of the light shell. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The soft and cute little ball quickly nodded and chirped. "Okay." Luo Qingtong nodded. In the waist ring in her hand, there was no lack of huge space. It was more than enough to store these light shells. Although she did not know what these light shells were used for, they were the light balls of the sector beast's birth. Maybe they were useful to it? As Luo Qingtong thought about it, she immediately kept the huge shards of the light shell. She picked out a huge space ring from the waist ring that Little Pig had given her. She waved her hand and put the huge light shell fragments scattered on the ground into the waist ring. Seeing this, the Xianhuan sect leader and the others who were walking toward Luo Qingtong were shocked. They also had Sumeru space spirit weapons. However, they could not do what Luo Qingtong did and put away the huge light shell fragments with a wave of her hand. Because it required too much space. Luo Qingtong actually had such a huge spatial Sumeru spirit tool in her hands? Everyone looked at Luo Qingtong with amazement and awe. Not because of anything else, the ability Luo Qingtong had revealed was already extraordinary. Now that she had such a large spatial Sumeru spirit tool in her hands, everyone couldn't help but guess the true identity of Luo Qingtong. Even if the highest dean had tried his best to testify that Luo Qingtong was someone from the true Spill Continent's secular world. However, just like how the beast tamer King Guguju couldn't believe that Luo Qingtong was from the secular world, the Xianhuan sect couldn't believe it either. After all, was there anyone in the secular world who had an endless trump card like Luo Qingtong and an unfathomable ability? With the talent and strength that Luo Qingtong had displayed, no one would doubt that she was a powerful direct descendant of a great race or a high-level power. While everyone was thinking, they had already walked to Luo Qingtong's side. "Miss Luo?" The Xianhuan sect leader was deliberating, thinking of just how to broach the subject with Luo Qingtong. Now that most of the influences in the hidden world had already submitted to Luo Qingtong, The people of the Xianhuan sect also intended to pledge their allegiance to Luo Qingtong. After all, with the general trend of events, there was no benefit to their Xianhuan sect remaining independent. On the contrary, with the friendship that they had with Su Yu and the others in protecting Luo Qingtong, if they pledged their allegiance, Luo Qingtong absolutely wouldn't treat them badly. As the Xianhuan sect leader thought this, he opened his mouth to speak. Chapter 2191. Rumble. The entire Forbidden Zone was in turmoil again. Just where Luo Qingtong and the others were standing, in the sky above the center of the Forbidden Zone, dark clouds suddenly rolled and roared. The entire Forbidden Zone, and even the land of the fallen immortals, was shaken. The commotion was not any weaker than when the sector beasts were born. What's going on? In the Forbidden Zone, everyone's faces were filled with shock. They didn't know why there would be such a commotion and change in the land of the fallen immortals. Hadn't that ball of light already been born? The treasure that the extraterrestrial experts were fighting for had already belonged to Luo Qingtong. How could there still be such a big commotion and change? Could it be that there were other treasures in the Forbidden Zone? But that ball of light was already something that the extraterrestrial experts were fighting for. What treasure could be more precious than it? Everyone was thinking about this, and then they looked at the scene that had suddenly condensed in the sky. They saw an incomparably huge human face appear in the sky above the center of the Forbidden Zone. The face was extremely strange and ugly. When pieced together, it looked like a ferocious ghost monster. The lines on the face were constantly twisting and moving. Everyone looked at the shape of the human face. Suddenly, a sect member raised his hand and pointed at the huge human face. With a shocked expression he shouted, "Look, this isn't a human face. It's something formed by countless human faces mixed together. What the hell is this?" His voice was filled with indescribable panic and fear. Anyone who saw such a scene could not help but feel their hair stand on end. On the huge face, there were countless faces densely packed together. The expressions on these faces were different, and they were constantly changing and twisting. That was why the expression on the huge face was so strange and terrifying. Everyone looked at the huge face in the sky and felt their hair stand on end. Just as the person from the sect said, "What the hell was this? How could there be such a big commotion in the land of the fallen immortals at this time?" As for Luo Qingtong, she frowned when the huge face appeared. Not for any other reason, but when the huge face appeared, the little ball jumped up and rushed into her arms. Then it kept chirping something. Luo Qingtong couldn't understand its words, but she could hear the panic and fear in its words. Was this huge face coming for this little guy? Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. She raised her head and looked at the place where the giant face had appeared. Her blood-red eyes flickered, and she quickly saw the true appearance of the giant face. The densely packed human faces embedded in the huge human face had completely merged with the aura of the fallen immortal land. The faces were derived from the aura of the land of the deceased immortals. What are they? Luo Qingtong looked at the faces crowded together. The bloody light in her eyes flickered. Soon she had an idea. These human faces couldn't be the manifestation of the obsessions of the foreign race experts that died here, right? At this thought, Luo Qingtong's heart skipped a beat. She carefully looked at the densely packed human faces and quickly confirmed that her idea was correct. These human faces were really a collection of the obsessions of the foreign race experts. Chapter 2192. Rumble. With the appearance of the giant face, the aura in the land of the fallen immortals boiled even more violently. Violent auras filled the air. They thought that the opening of the land of the fallen immortals would cause the aura to weaken. Now that the giant face had appeared, the aura became even denser. The black aura spread throughout the land of the fallen immortals, causing everyone in the forbidden area to panic. Oh no! The aura in the land of the fallen immortals is getting stronger. Yeah. Quick, let's get out of here or we'll all die here. Everyone's heart was filled with panic. The land of the fallen immortals was never a friendly place. If it weren't for the fact that the land of the fallen immortals would open for a period of time every year, causing the aura inside to weaken, they wouldn't have come here. But now, the aura in the land of the fallen immortals was getting stronger again. It wasn't time for the land of the fallen immortals to close yet, but the aura was getting stronger. No matter how stupid they were, they could guess that it had something to do with the giant face that had appeared in the forbidden area. Everyone panicked and hurriedly asked Luo Qingtong to take them away. After all, they were Luo Qingtong's slaves now. They couldn't leave without permission. However, as soon as they spoke, Luo Qingtong's voice sounded faintly. It's too late. Luo Qingtong looked around as she spoke. Thick black fog had already spread out in the center of the forbidden area. It was even more corrosive than the aura in the land of the fallen immortals. In the blink of an eye, the black fog spread from the edge of the forbidden area. A few disciples who came into contact with the black fog screamed in agony. Then they quickly turned into walking corpses. They screamed shrilly as they rushed towards their fellow disciples. The latter didn't have time to react. Many of them were pushed to the ground. Left with no other choice, the others took action and killed the corrupted disciples. Everyone retreated with pale faces, not knowing what to do. The aura in the forbidden area was too terrifying. If it was the aura of the land of the fallen immortals outside, it would be fine. They had immortal jade bones on them, so they could just barely hold on for a while. As long as they were fast enough, they could still escape. However, at this moment, they were surrounded in the center of the forbidden area. The aura inside was enough to kill them the moment they touched it. Even the immortal jade bones aura was of no use. What the hell is going on? Everyone felt despair in their hearts. The Heavenly Yuan sect master and the others, who had originally planned on talking to Luo Qingtong about pledging their allegiance, paled at this sight. "Miss Luo, do you have any ideas?" They looked hopefully at Luo Qingtong. If there was anyone here who had a solution, it would probably be Luo Qingtong. Before the girl entered the forbidden zone, she was already able to help them neutralize the power from the forbidden zone. After that, he made arrangements on Suyu and the others to ensure that they would be safe in the forbidden zone. Perhaps there would be a way this time as well. Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation. Suyu, Su Xiaoxiao, and the others stopped recovering and retreated to Luo Qingtong's side in a well-trained manner. Master Boss. Chapter 2193. Luo Qingtong responded in a low voice. She glanced at the spreading black fog and said to Suyu and the others, "Distribute some of the blood-colored immortal jade bones to them." Luo Qingtong had given Suyu and the others a lot of purified blood-colored immortal jade bones. They hadn't absorbed much when they recovered, so they immediately responded and distributed some of the purified blood-colored immortal jade bones to the people from the sections. These blood-colored immortal jade bones had a stronger aura than ordinary immortal jade bones, and the power of blood was also thicker. After the people from the sects received the blood-colored immortal jade bones, they were no longer attacked by the black fog. But this alone wasn't enough. Luo Qingtong stared intently at the spreading black fog. Crack, crack, crack. Amidst the black fog, the sound of rusty gears grinding could be heard continuously. It also sounded like something sharp was scraping in the air, making one's hair stand on end. Roar. As those voices continued to ring out, sharp and sinister whistles began to ring out one after another. Then, everyone saw one figure after another stepping out of the thick black fog. Their skeletons were wretched, their eye sockets were empty, and dark flames were rising from them. These figures that appeared in the thick fog were actually skeletons. Those are the corpses of the foreign experts who died here. Seeing this scene, many people from the sects cried out with pale faces. They're all alive. When their voices rang out, Luo Qing's eyes clearly saw the white skeletons standing up one after another in the places where the black fog filled the air. At this moment, they were surrounded by an army of skeletons that stretched as far as the eye could see. Obviously, these skeletons were all under the control of the giant human face in the sky. Seeing this, Luo Qingtong instantly figured out many things. She recalled that Bai Suqing had once told her that divine beasts would pass by the restricted area of the fallen immortal land from time to time. Therefore they suspected that there were divine beasts among them. Now it was confirmed that the divine beasts were actually the power of the giant sector beast's light ball to protect itself. Then there was a problem. The foreign experts in the restricted area were all dead. The sects in the hidden world knew of the dangers in the restricted area, so they wouldn't go in easily. In that case, who was the mythical beast flowing light fighting against? Or rather, what kind of power were they fighting against? Luo Qingtong looked at the giant human face floating in the sky. She already had an answer in her heart. Obviously, these foreign experts were still unwilling to give up after their deaths. They wanted to obtain the sector beast, so their minds were entangled and wouldn't dissipate even after death. When the fallen immortal land was formed, they had always been coveting the sector beast. But this time, when the sector beasts were born, they were scattered by the majestic and vast spirit chi light pillars and hurricanes. They could not gather together at all, and they could not get close to the sector beasts. Under such circumstances, they had deliberately loosened the restrictions of the forbidden zone and allowed people from the outside sects to enter. This was all to prevent the birth of the sector beast. After the sector beast was born, they would no longer have any chance to obtain the sector beast. When Luo Qingtong thought of this, she immediately understood what was going on. At this moment, swoosh. Chapter 2194. Oh my mommy mia. Little Pig ran like a gust of wind with his two little ears perked up. He dashed out of the black mist. He was picking up and purifying the celestial jade bones with the ancient heavenly spirit wood when the black mist spread over. Then the white bones came back to life. Fortunately, he ran fast enough. Otherwise, he might have been made into a pork hot pot. It ran to Luo Qingtong's side and handed the useless ring containing the ancient heavenly spiritual wood to Luo Qingtong. Then, with a look of lingering fear, it patted its chest with its little hoof and said, "Oh my God, I was scared to death." "Hey, what is this?" He looked at the little ball in Luo Qingtong's arms and poked it with his little hoof. Instantly, Xuanhuan jumped to his feet. Chirp, chirp, chirp. It bounced toward Little Pig, but was stopped by Little Pig with one of its hoof. Wait. The corner of Little Pig's mouth twitched as he looked at the little meatball that was struggling and jumping around in his hand. This guy that looks like a glutinous rice ball, is that Sector Beast? Just like Luo Qingtong, Little Pig was in disbelief. Oh my God. What happened to being domineering and cool? What happened to being more awesome than an ancient divine beast? Did Luo Qingtong take such a huge risk to contract with a meatball just now? Little Pig looked at the little ball of meat in his hands. His whole body, no pig, was a little uncomfortable. What's the use of this little guy? Is he going to throw it to the enemy to choke them to death? This was simply too hilarious. Wait, is it because you cut it out that it's stunted? Little Pig shook the little sector beast in his hands. The little sector beast looked at him with a gloomy face. Then it roared and bit at Little Pig's hoof. Little Pig wanted to see what ability this little sector beast had and whether it was affected in any way. Logically speaking, when a sector beast was born, it should be an adult. This was because they weren't real beasts, but the manifestation of the laws of heaven and earth. It was not that Little Pig had never seen a sector beast before, but he had never seen one as small as this. Could it be that this guy was really affected by Luo Qingtong's autopsy and that it wasn't time for him to be born yet? If that was the case, he didn't know if its ability was still there. However, before it could check, the little ball bit it. Little Pig swung his little hooves and jumped on the spot while squealing. Little Furball, on the other hand, ran back into Luo Qingtong's arms. You bastard! Little Pig clenched his teeth as he looked at it. However, before he could run over and grab Xuanhuan, the giant face in the sky moved. Brr. It opened its mouth wide and roared. The white bones in the black fog rushed towards Luo Qingtong and the others. These white bones were formed from the corpses of the alien experts. Now, under the control of the aura of their obsessions, although they didn't have the full strength they had when they were alive, they still had 10 to 20% of their strength. This army of white bones spread all over the mountains and plains, making people look awe-inspiring. Master. Boss. Su Yu and Su Xiaoxiao immediately went to Luo Qingtong's side to protect her. Chapter 2195. All of you come here. Luo Qingtong looked at the army of skeletons rushing over with a very cold expression. Back then, the foreign experts who came here to fight for the sector beast were all above the venerable realm. Now, even if these skeletons only had 10 to 20% of their strength, they were still at the holy venerable realm. Not to mention that the black fog around them was corrosive. The people from the various sects would be at a disadvantage if they were to fight in the black fog. After all, the blood immortal jade bones that Luo Qingtong had obtained before were limited. Once the power of the blood immortal jade bones was exhausted, Su Yu and the others, as well as the people of the sects, would not be able to resist the attack of the black fog. Luo Qingtong thought and immediately gathered Su Yu and the others. Among them were those who had already sworn to become Luo Qingtong's slaves. Fortunately, Luo Qingtong had made them swear before. Otherwise, who knew what kind of trouble would have happened in the forbidden area at this moment? Luo Qingtong did not have the time to deal with them at this time. But now there was no need to worry. These people were already on her side and they even helped Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong was very glad that she had not killed these people along with beast tamer King Guguju. Yes. When the people of the sects heard Luo Qingtong's words, they immediately ran over to her. The young girl was their only hope and way out. Not to mention that they had already sworn to become Luo Qingtong's slaves. Even if they had not sworn at this moment in the forbidden area, only Luo Qingtong could save them. The crowd ran over in a panic. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and released the ancient heavenly spirit wood from the waist ring in her hand. Bang! The ancient heavenly spirit wood was much taller than the sapling from before. It was about 5 meters tall. Also, the waist ring in Luo Qingtong's hand was refined by Tian Mingzi, so the space inside was extraordinarily big. Otherwise it would not be able to hold it. Swoosh! After the ancient heavenly spirit would landed on the ground, it immediately stretched out its branches and leaves. Wherever its branches and leaves went, the black fog could not get close at all. In an instant there was a vacuum between Luo Qingtong and the others. Seeing this scene, the people of the sects and the Xianhuan sect were both surprised and delighted. Luo Qingtong's methods were endless. Was she really just a young girl from the secular world? The people of the Xianhuan sect could not help but think. As for the people from the other sects, they swore to be Luo Qingtong's slaves unwillingly. At this moment he no longer had any complaints in his heart. Luo Qingtong had too many tricks up her sleeve. They wouldn't be at a disadvantage if they followed such a person. If they performed better in the future, they might even be able to enjoy endless benefits. Thinking of this, the crowd suddenly rejoiced in their hearts. While the crowd surrounded Luo Qingtong, relying on the ancient heavenly spirit would to resist the skeleton army. Screech! From an unknown place within the black fog, a series of beast cries and roars could be vaguely heard. Hearing these sounds, Luo Qingtong felt inexplicably familiar. In this forbidden area there were other people besides them. Chapter 2196. Oh my god. Oh no, oh no. I forgot. That girl named Yun Shi. The one you gave the beast mark inheritance to in the Broken Star Valley. She deliberately stopped outside the center of the forbidden area for you and lured away the contracted beasts of the beast tamer King Guguju and the others. Oh my mamma mia, how could it forget about this? No wonder I kept feeling that something was wrong when I collected those immortal jade bones. I forgot about one person. Luo Qingtong's expression changed when she heard this. No wonder she didn't see the golden-winged condor and the others when she tortured the beast tamer King Guguju. Luo Qingtong didn't expect that Yun Shi lured them away outside the center of the forbidden area. You guys stay here. I'll go get them. The beast tamer King Guguju and the others were dead, and the golden-winged condor and the others had recovered from the control of the beast tamer spell. They should be on their way here right now. As Luo Qingtong thought about it, her figure shot forward like an arrow. Hey wait, I'll go with you. Little Pig said as he quickly hopped on his four hooves to catch up. Bang! Outside the center of the forbidden area, Yun Shi lay on the back of the golden-winged condor. The golden-winged condor carried her and rushed toward the center of the forbidden area with a group of other demonic beasts. They had completely regained consciousness after the death of the beast tamer King Guguju. It was just that Yun Shi fell into a coma after using the beast mark inheritance. Because the group of demonic beasts was summoned by her, they could only wait for her by her side. Fortunately, Yun Shi woke up not long after she fell into a coma. After asking about her relationship with Luo Qingtong, the golden-winged condor carried her toward the center of the forbidden area. However, no one expected that there would be a change in the center of the forbidden area halfway. Looking at the white bones waking up one after another, the group of demonic beasts didn't know what was going on. They could only try their best to rush toward the center of the forbidden area. However, there were simply too many skeletons. Coupled with the invasion of the black mist. Fortunately, Yun Shi had the blood celestial jade bone that Luo Qingtong had given her. Otherwise, they would have been corroded before these skeletons could do anything. Just as the golden-winged condor and the others were desperately killing the skeletons, Luo Qingtong arrived. Bang! The young girl's sword was like a dragon, and in an instant, it swept into the group of the golden-winged condors, killing all the white bones that were entangled around them. Go! Luo Qingtong rushed to the golden-winged condor and said to it. It was only then that the latter discovered that Luo Qingtong's strength had actually increased to peak holy exalted level. Oh my god, isn't this little girl's strength increasing too quickly? What on earth did she do? The golden-winged condor looked at Luo Qingtong with a strange expression on its face. Its consciousness had been suppressed by the beast tamer King Guguju before, so it didn't know what was going on in the outside world. It also didn't know that Luo Qingtong had successfully contracted a sector beast. However, seeing Luo Qingtong like this, it should have also obtained a great opportunity. The golden-winged condor didn't ask any more questions. It followed Luo Qingtong and swept toward the center of the forbidden area. At this time in the outside world, the palace master of the Star Alliance and the others had been paying close attention to the movements in the land of the deceased immortals. When they saw the huge human face appear in the sky, everyone present was shocked. What is this? The people in the palace master of the Star Alliance were shocked. Chapter 2197. On the other hand, the Star Alliance Temple Master was extremely excited. So that's how it is. He looked at the giant face in the sky and finally understood why the land of the fallen immortals didn't allow outsiders and experts above the Exalt realm to enter. It turned out that the great beings from other domains who had died here were still unwilling to give up on the sector beasts inside. That was why they had gathered their consciousness bodies to prevent the others from entering and taking away the sector beasts. But they suddenly appeared now. Was it because someone had already obtained the sector beast? Thinking of this, the Star Alliance Temple Master was indescribably excited. He had just seen the heaven and earth anomaly in the sky disappear, so he did not know whether the sector beast had successfully been born or not. Is there anyone who has contracted it? Now that he saw the giant face, he immediately had an idea. Obviously, the sector beast had indeed been born, and someone had already obtained it. Very good, haha. The Star Alliance Temple Master laughed loudly. Someone had obtained the sector beast, which meant he could also obtain the sector beast. As long as he could kill the person who had contracted the sector beast. Let's go. The Star Alliance Temple Master's expression was cold. He looked at the giant face in the land of the fallen immortals and said in a low voice, "Take our people and enter the land of the fallen immortals." They had not entered the land of the fallen immortals before because they did not know what treasures were in it. Besides, the land of the fallen immortals did not allow them to enter or they would collapse. But now he knew that the treasure inside was a sector beast, and he also knew that the giant human face was an amalgamation of the minds of the great beings from other regions. It was the face that controlled the aura in the land of the fallen immortals and prevented them from entering. Since that was the case, what was there to worry about? This giant human face was probably waiting to kill the person who had contracted the sector beast. Under such circumstances, how could it have the time to stop them from entering? If they went now, they could be the oriole behind the mantis stalking the cicada. Thinking of this, the Star Alliance Temple Master could not wait any longer. He leaped and led the people of the Star Alliance Temple into the land of the fallen immortals. The experts of the Star Alliance Hall dashed into the thick black mist in the land of the deceased immortals. With their strength, the fog's influence on them was limited. Moreover, they also had immortal jade bones. When the Star Alliance Temple Master and the others entered the land of the deceased immortals, Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others also looked up at Xianxia. "Master?" Their voices were inquiring. As soon as the huge human face appeared, they could tell its origin at a glance. Obviously, the sector beast had been taken by someone else. He wondered if that person was the evil physician. But even if he wasn't an evil doctor, now this giant human face was going to deal with the person who had obtained the sector beast. Evil Doctor was in the middle of it, so he was afraid that he would be implicated and would not be spared. Go. Yi Qinshin's eyes were cold. His gaze never left the sky at the center of the forbidden area in the land of the deceased immortals. He had seen the giant human face transform with his own eyes. If his guess was correct, the person who had obtained the sector beast should be that woman. Chapter 2198. The light of warning that had been flashing intensely above the ladder, disturbing his state of mind, had disappeared at this moment. Obviously, Luo Qingtong was out of danger. That woman. If she hadn't gotten the sector beast, how could she be so safe and sound? Yi Qinshin thought, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Then, in the next second, his figure swept up, and in an instant, like a graceful sunset, he swept toward the land of the deceased immortals. Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others followed closely behind him. At this moment, in the center of the forbidden area in the land of the deceased immortals. After Luo Qingtong went to meet Yun Shi and the golden-winged eagle, the skeleton army immediately changed their direction and rushed toward the direction that Luo Qingtong had left. When Luo Qingtong brought Yun Shi and the others back, the resistance they encountered was dozens of times greater than when she had left. Bang! Luo Qingtong raised her sword and killed a skeleton that was rushing toward her. Another skeleton of the holy venerable realm also rushed toward her at this moment. Their target was the little dumpling in her arms. Sensing the movements of these skeletons, Luo Qingtong became more and more certain of her previous guess. She came out to meet Yun Shi and the others in person to confirm whether her previous guess was right. Unfortunately, it seemed that she had guessed right. Looking at the dense skeleton army in front of her, Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. The blood-red light in them suddenly exploded and gathered again. In her eyes, an extremely magnificent and ever-changing scene was formed. Heaven-conquering art, annihilation. After confirming the most vulnerable and easiest route in the skeleton army through her blood-red eyes, Luo Qingtong's figure swept up in an instant. The black sword light shone brilliantly in an instant, almost the most brilliant killing intent and the most dazzling light in the world. The light, like the god of death spreading his wings, swept straight up, and streaked across the sky with a cold light that almost broke the sky and blasted forward. Bang bang bang. Countless skeletons were killed by the death blade light transformed from the life and death yin-yang sword in Luo Qingtong's hand at this moment. The power of death was already very effective against these skeletons. If it weren't for the fact that these skeletons had a physical body, if they were the ghosts and blood-red phantoms that Luo Qingtong had faced before, Luo Qingtong would have been able to annihilate this army of skeletons by herself. Her death blade was the nemesis of all death chi and souls in this world. Boom boom boom. Luo Qingtong's sword light smashed the bones into pieces. Luo Qingtong's figure flew up. Her red dress streaked across the sky like the world's most stunning ray of light. Go! She led the golden-winged condor and the others and flew forward along the path she had created. Along the way, all the white bones that blocked her way were all shattered and exploded in an instant, turning into clouds of white smoke. Bang bang bang. Just as Su Yu and the others couldn't wait and wanted to rush out to find her, Luo Qingtong and the golden-winged condor appeared in their line of sight. Everyone go in. Seeing that Su Yu and the others were about to rush out of the range of the ancient heavenly spiritual wood, Luo Qingtong frowned slightly and berated them in a low voice. Everyone hurriedly retreated when they heard this. Luo Qingtong led the golden-winged condor and the others in. Chapter 2199. Master. Su Yu and the others quickly surrounded Luo Qingtong after she rushed in. Yes. Luo Qingtong nodded, then looked at Yun Shi who was on the golden-winged condor. The latter's body was covered in blood, and she looked very scary. Obviously, Yun Shi had paid a great price to forcibly summon the golden-winged condor and the others. The bloody light in Luo Qingtong's eyes flickered, and she quickly found out everything about Yun Shi's body. She had temporarily lost her strength, and the time to recover was not long. At the same time, the power of the beast mark inheritance in Yun Shi's body had disappeared. It seemed that Yun Shi had used the forbidden power of the Zhuge 13 beast mark inheritance to become like this. However, this power could be recovered. Luo Qingtong watched the power of the beast mark in Yun Shi's body slowly recover. However, at this speed it would take Yun Shi a year and a half for her strength to recover. That was too long. And Luo Qingtong looked at the cracks on the beast mark in Yun Shi's body. If it was not repaired, even if Yun Shi's strength recovered in the future, the power she could use would be greatly reduced. It could be said that in order to help her this time, Yun Shi had wasted most of the power of the beast mark inheritance. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed and she remembered this in her heart. After leaving the land of the fallen immortals, she would find a way to help Yun Shi restore the power of the beast mark in her body. However, the level of the Zhuge 13 beast mark was very high. Luo Qingtong would need the herbs to repair it, which were not available in the true Spill continent. She would have to see if she could find them in the extraterrestrial. Just as Luo Qingtong was thinking, she heard a series of fierce roars from outside. Then the army of bones that had been left behind by Luo Qingtong and the golden-winged condor rushed over again. There seemed to be no end to those white bones. Too many extraterrestrial powerhouses had died here in the past. Perhaps it was because of the obsession of those extraterrestrial powerhouses after they died, but the bones gathered again after being smashed. It was no wonder that in this forbidden zone, there had been an endless stream of attacks aimed at the sector beast's light mass. They wanted to get the sector beast. If it wasn't for this, it would have been shattered by the divine beasts. It was impossible for it to exist for so many years. Seeing this scene, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed. She looked at the endless white bone army and said to the people around her, "Follow closely. Let's go." As she spoke, she waved her hand, and the ancient heaven spirit wood that she had placed on the ground was pulled up by her. Shwa. The ancient heavenly spirit wood floated above her head as she held it up with one hand. Go. Luo Qingtong shouted in a low voice, and in an instant her figure swept out. Su Yu, the Sky Yuan sect, and the other sects followed beside her. The group of people rushed towards the center of the forbidden zone. Bang bang bang. The branches of the ancient heavenly spirit tree extended. The thick black fog lingered 3 inches away from it, unable to get close at all. Below it, Luo Qingtong and the others only cared about killing the enemies. Countless skeletons fell under their attacks. Especially Luo Qingtong. With a slash of her sword, she swept away a large number of white bones. They forcefully carved out a bloody path in the dense army of skeletons. Chapter 2200. But even so, with so many of them, the number of bones they cleared was still very impressive. The group of people kept approaching the edge of the forbidden area. Luo Qingtong and the others were about to leave the center of the forbidden area, and the army of bones could not stop them at all. In the sky, the huge human face that was constantly changing its expression and shape roared fiercely at this moment. The sharp and sinister cry resounded through the sky in an instant. In the next second, its figure looked down at the world and suddenly rushed towards Luo Qingtong and the others. Boom! As its figure surged, the thick black fog between heaven and earth was like boiling water in an instant. It constantly surged and rolled violently towards Luo Qingtong and the others. Seeing this scene, the group of people following Luo Qingtong could not help but gasp in shock and fear. They didn't know if the strange tree above their heads could block the attack. After all, the black fog was enough to easily erode them. Now, the fog, stirred by the huge human face, was so dense that it almost turned into liquid. Countless black water droplets lingered around them and flew towards them. Ah! A sect disciple on the periphery of the ancient heaven spirit tree was distracted for a moment and was accidentally entangled by the attack of a skeleton. Then, with a bang, he was dragged out of the area covered by the ancient heaven spirit tree. In just an instant, his body was eroded into white bones. He didn't even have time to scream before he was transformed into a walking corpse. Then, those white bones rushed in the direction of the crowd with a greenish-black face. The blood-colored immortal jade bones on his body did not have any effect on the liquefied black fog. Everyone looked on and could not help but feel a burst of fear in their hearts. Their bodies also trembled fiercely. Miss Luo. Some of the sect disciples with weaker mental fortitude almost couldn't help but kneel on the ground. They looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong and could not help but shout loudly. A group of people from a sect still had to rely on a 15 or 16-year-old girl. If word of this spread, no one would believe it. But now it had really happened. Not only that, everyone saw Luo Qingtong as their only savior. If there was really someone who could lead them out of here, it would definitely be Luo Qingtong. Everyone regretted it now. If they had known that the girl was so powerful and extraordinary, why would they have gone against her in the first place? If they had stood on her side with the people from the Sky Yuan sect, they would not have to worry and be afraid. After all, Luo Qingtong was a person who valued kindness and friendship. Her methods were ruthless, but she did not lose her principles. As her enemy, it was naturally the most painful and terrible thing in this world. However, being her friend and companion was the happiest thing in the world. Because as long as it was within the girl's power, she would protect you better than anyone else. At this moment, Su Yu and the others were beside Luo Qingtong. Then, it was the people from the Sky Yuan sect. Finally, it was the turn of the people from the sects who had sworn loyalty to them. Chapter 2201. Their hearts were filled with fear and trepidation. At the same time, they felt a deep sense of regret. As they spoke, Luo Qingtong turned around and noticed the rolling black fog. Bang! Her gaze froze. Seeing that the black fog was about to invade the 3 inches of light around the ancient heavenly spirit tree, Luo Qingtong threw out a pile of immortal jade bones. Throw out all the immortal jade bones in your hands. Luo Qingtong said in a low voice. She had a limited number of immortal jade bones that hadn't been purified yet. Once the ancient heavenly spirit tree couldn't withstand the black fog, Luo Qingtong would be the first to abandon them, just as the other sects thought. After all, she had to shrink the ancient heavenly spirit tree and concentrate its energy if she wanted to protect Su Yu and the others. Luo Qingtong didn't know what all life was equal or that life was priceless. She only knew that the lives of the people around her were more valuable than anyone else's. Yes. When the people from the various sects heard this, they immediately threw out the immortal jade bones in their hands. They were afraid that if they threw them out any later, the ancient heavenly spirit tree wouldn't be able to withstand the black fog. At that time, all of them would die. Everyone threw out all the immortal jade bones in their hands. In order to enter the land of the fallen immortals, these sects naturally had a lot of immortal jade bones in their hands. They weren't like Luo Qingtong and the others, who could refine and purify immortal jade bones. Therefore, at Luo Qingtong's command, the immortal jade bones flew toward the ancient heavenly spirit tree in the sky like scattered petals. The latter received the nourishment of the death energy contained in the immortal jade bones and instantly emitted beams of clear light from its canopy. It forced out the black fog that was about to invade its canopy. At the same time, the giant human face rushed to the front of the ancient heavenly spirit tree. Brr. The giant face opened its mouth wide. Countless faces twisted their expressions and screeched sharply, biting toward Luo Qingtong and the others. Buzz. The radiance of the ancient heavenly spirit wood, which had been strengthened by the death energy of the immortal jade bones, was gradually suppressed. Seeing this, Luo Qingtong frowned. As for the people from the sects on the periphery, they had already begun their attack. Boom boom boom. Their attacks landed on the giant face that was rushing towards them. Countless human faces were shattered and reformed by their attacks, but they were not damaged at all. These human faces were all manifestations of the consciousness of the extraterrestrial experts. Ordinary attacks were useless against them. Only attacks that contained mental power were useful. However, how many people from the various sects could launch such an attack? Even if they could, how many people would be able to hurt them? The huge face whizzed over, and under everyone's horrified gazes, it suddenly opened its mouth wide and bit towards them. It was going to devour them along with the ancient heavenly spiritual wood. Countless faces twisted and shrieked, waiting to capture Luo Qingtong and the others in one fell swoop. Seeing this, many people from the various sects were so frightened that their legs went weak and they fell to the ground. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's figure suddenly leaped out from among them. Swoosh. Chapter 2202. Get down? As Luo Qingtong's voice rang out, the life and death sword in her hand vibrated. With a clang, the black and white longsword in Luo Qingtong's hand suddenly split into two. Annihilation. The life blade and the death blade were held in her hands at the same time. These two swords represented the power of life and the power of death at the same time. Regardless of whether it was the exuberant power of life or the most evil power of death in the world, they were both the nemesis of the Yin souls in this world. Especially the power of death. The Yin souls could still resist the power of life by relying on their own death aura. However, the power of death was of the same origin as them and was of a much higher level than their own aura. There was almost no way to resist the power of this sword. At this moment, Luo Qingtong transformed the life and death sword into two long swords and held them in her hands at the same time. The bloody light in her eyes flickered violently at this moment. Then she raised her hands and swung the swords. Boom. Two rays of annihilation suddenly blasted out from her hands. They intertwined with each other and turned into two rays of light of the two extremes of yin and yang, rushing forward wildly. The light of annihilation blasted out by Luo Qingtong could originally transform other forces for her own use. Now, the two long swords in her hands swung out a ray of light at the same time. The two rays of light annihilated each other and transformed into the shape of the 8 trigrams of yin and yang at the same time, rushing forward violently. Even though the thought bodies formed by these extraterrestrial experts were extremely powerful and were almost unafraid of any soul attacks, they still couldn't help but tremble when they saw the rays blasted out by Luo Qingtong. Boom. Luo Qingtong's two rays of light almost brushed past the scalps of the people lying on the ground in front of her and flew towards the huge face. At this moment, the latter was opening its mouth wide, waiting to devour Luo Qingtong and the others along with the ancient heavenly spiritual wood. When it saw Luo Qingtong's two rays of light flying towards it, its heart trembled, but it was already too late to move. Boom. Luo Qingtong's two rays of light directly blasted into the huge face's wide-open mouth. Bang. The mouth of the huge face suddenly burst open. The countless human faces that made up the huge mouth howled miserably as they turned into ashes in front of everyone. In front of everyone's eyes, half of the huge face was directly blasted apart, leaving only the upper half of the face above the mouth. It's the power of life and death. The human faces that made up the giant face screamed in terror, making shrill sounds that only they could understand. They looked at the two black and white swords in Luo Qingtong's hands with shock and fear. Their hearts were filled with unspeakable fear. The other party actually had such a heaven-defying artifact in his hands. Although the consciousness bodies of these extraterrestrial experts were formed purely from their consciousness, they didn't have a physical body. They were the lingering wills of all the foreign experts who died in the land of the fallen immortals. They were the embodiment of all the death chi and hostility in the land. But they were still ghosts after all. Under the attack of Luo Qingtong's life and death two right swords, they couldn't even escape and turned into ashes. If not for the fact that their bodies were large enough, the attack just now would have been enough to kill them completely. Buzz. Chapter 2203. The land of the deceased immortals existed because of these human faces. The black fog was created by them. Now that almost half of those human faces had been killed by Luo Qingtong, the aura in the land of the deceased immortals had naturally dissipated. At this moment, the Star Alliance Temple Master and the others, who were rushing toward the Forbidden Zone, felt the change in the aura around them, and their expressions changed slightly. The collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials has been injured. The Star Alliance Temple Master's face was filled with fanaticism. The power of the Sector Beast was actually so strong. The Star Alliance Temple Master didn't know that the attack was launched by Luo Qingtong. He thought that the person who had contracted the Sector Beast had obtained the Sector Beast and released it with its help. His heart was filled with excitement. The collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials was completely connected to the land of the deceased immortals. It could be said that as long as the land of the deceased immortals was not destroyed, the collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials would not be destroyed. The Star Alliance Temple Master had come prepared this time, so he naturally knew how to deal with the collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials. However, the people from the sects in the land of the deceased immortals didn't have the strength or ability to deal with the collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials. It must be that Sector Beast. Ah. Good. The Star Alliance Temple Master said good 3 times in a row. That Sector Beast was indeed extraordinary to be able to severely injure the collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials. He laughed loudly and continued to rush toward the Forbidden Zone with the people around him. He couldn't wait any longer. Xianxia and the others who had originally been behind them had already quietly passed by them. At this moment, after sensing the change in the aura of the land of the deceased immortals, they suddenly stopped. "Master, it's the evil doctor." Beiqing, Fengyu and the others were excited. They could feel the power of the heaven-conquering art that Luo Qingtong had used. That was a move that Yi Qianxian had created. In this world, only Yi Qianxian could use it. Of course, Luo Qingtong was added to the list. The evil doctor was actually fine. Not only that, but he had also injured the manifestation of those extraterrestrial experts' wills. Everyone was astonished to the extreme. Although they weren't afraid of the huge faces formed by the consciousness of these foreign powerhouses, it wouldn't be easy to deal with them. After all, he had the entire land of the fallen immortals to rely on. Unless they destroyed this place, they might not be able to do what the evil doctor did if they attacked directly without unleashing their full strength. But how strong was the evil doctor when he entered the immortal graveyard? Saint Emperor stage. Right now he was only at the holy venerable realm. After all, they didn't sense the aura of an exalted realm breakthrough. But the level of the true spill continent was too low. It was impossible to break through to the exalted realm. In other words, the evil doctor was able to injure the enormous human face with a strength below the exalt realm? Everyone was speechless as they thought about it. Oh my god, that's all they can do. Should they say, as expected of the person that Master had taken a fancy to? The more Beiqing, Fengyu and the others came into contact with Luo Qingtong, the more they admired Yi Qianxian's foresight. When Master first met the evil doctor, the girl was only at the martial general realm. Or was she at the martial master realm? At that time the evil doctor was like an ant that they could kill with a puff of air. But Master had a discerning eye. He had taken a fancy to the evil doctor at first glance. After pursuing her several times, he had resolutely refused to let her go. Now, every time the evil doctor grew, it proved what he had said back then: the girl was a pearl in the sea lost to the world. Chapter 2204. Bang! In the center of the restricted area, Luo Qingtong's figure landed, but her expression was not so relaxed. The annihilation technique that Yi Qianxian had taught her was no longer as powerful as when she had been weak when she had advanced to the Holy Venerate realm. Otherwise, based on the strength she had been able to display before, this attack, coupled with the dual transformations of the life and death yin-yang swords, would have been enough to severely injure that huge face to the point where it could no longer transform. Now she had only injured half of its face. After all, this move had the advantage of catching them off guard. Once the consciousnesses of these Xenorace experts gathered and knew that she possessed such a divine weapon that could injure them, then the attacks that came down wouldn't be so easily effective. Sure enough, after Luo Qingtong had killed a small portion of their transformations, the extraterrestrial experts' consciousnesses did not dare to be careless anymore. Their gazes towards Luo Qingtong were filled with fear and apprehension. Even so, they were unwilling to let go of the little ball in her arms. They had waited so long for that sector beast, from when it was alive to after its death, just to obtain it. Especially since they were just a collection of consciousnesses. Once they obtained that sector beast, they could use the aura of the origin of laws on it to reconstruct their bodies. Even if they turned into a ghost body, it was still better than being imprisoned in the land of the deceased immortals with their consciousnesses lingering. Therefore, although the extraterrestrial experts' consciousnesses were very afraid of Luo Qingtong, they were still unwilling to leave. They surrounded Luo Qingtong and the others, circling around the entire ancient heaven spirit tree, constantly whistling and spiraling. When Luo Qingtong's attack blasted over, they immediately scattered in all directions. Then they immediately gathered again. Under its interference, the energy that the ancient heaven spirit tree had replenished from the immortal jade bones was constantly being depleted. If this went on, the ancient heaven spirit tree would not have enough power to resist the invasion of the surrounding black gas. At that time, Su Yu and the others would not be able to withstand the onslaught of the black mist. Even if it was Luo Qingtong, under the attack of the black fog, the strength of her attack would definitely be greatly affected. At that time, there would be an opportunity to take advantage of the gathering of the foreign experts' wills. Luo Qingtong thought and made a prompt decision. Let's go. As she spoke, she leaped forward and placed a finger on her forehead. In my name, release the seal. As Luo Qingtong's voice rang out, Little Pig's arrogant voice followed suit. Humph, let's see how your Grandpa Pig will deal with you. Little Pig couldn't hold himself back any longer. However, Luo Qingtong knew that it could only be unsealed once in a short period of time. Naturally, she couldn't use it easily. She just had to hold it in. Now it was finally Grandpa Pig's turn. Boom. Little Pig's body suddenly emitted a burst of light that enveloped its chubby and plump body. Under such circumstances, its body abruptly dashed forward. Roar. Between the heavens and the earth, a boundless roar that seemed to resound throughout the world, the ancient plains and the endless years of desolation. In the next second, a huge claw covered in scales abruptly extended from mid-air. With a boom, the huge human face was heavily pressed into the ground. At this moment, Chapter 2205. Those distorted faces violently surged and dissipated. Just like how it dealt with Luo Qingtong's sword light, when the claw pressed down on them, they quickly dissipated and gathered again in the air. However, no matter how they twisted and struggled, the huge claw still caught them. There seemed to be a strange power within the claw. Even the illusory bodies of these foreign experts couldn't escape from it. These distorted faces were mixed with their aggregates, and they were ruthlessly suppressed to the ground by Little Pig's true body. Rumble. An incomparably violent wave of dirt rose up in the sky. At the same time, Luo Qingtong's figure flew up in an instant. Attack. Annihilation. Following Luo Qingtong's clear shout, the Heavenly Yuan sect and the other sect's members who were shocked to the extreme by Little Pig's attack immediately regained their senses. They attacked together with Luo Qingtong, Su Yu and the others. They were overwhelmed with shock. It turned out that Luo Qingtong hadn't used her full strength before. Beast Tamer King Gu Guju's death wasn't unjust. If he hadn't taken advantage of the fact that Luo Qingtong's contracted light ball couldn't move and that Little Pig couldn't charge into Luo Qingtong's light pillar, he wouldn't even know how he died. Everyone was shocked, but at the same time they were extremely excited. Now that they were all Luo Qingtong's people, the stronger the girl's strength, the better it was for them. Everyone cheered indescribably in their hearts as they thought of this. Those who had previously submitted to Luo Qingtong were even more glad that they didn't take the wrong path at that time. Otherwise, how would they be able to survive now? Everyone's attacks violently blasted forward. In front of them there were densely packed white bones. The white bones in the center of the forbidden area were gathered by the foreign experts' wills, blocking the path in front of Luo Qingtong and the others to prevent them from leaving. And at this moment, under the attacks of Luo Qingtong and the others, those white bones exploded into pieces one after another. Luo Qingtong's figure swept up in an instant. With a wave of her sleeve, she fiercely swept up Little Pig, who had fallen from the air, and then led everyone to the center of the forbidden area. As long as they left the forbidden area, the foreign experts' wills wouldn't be able to do anything to them. After all, although the foreign experts' wills were incomparably powerful, they relied on the aura of the fallen immortal land to live. It was almost equivalent to being bound in this forbidden area. Once Luo Qingtong and the others left, they would no longer be able to catch up. And when Luo Qingtong and the others' figures swept forward, those distorted human faces rose up from where Little Pig had pressed them down. Their power dissipated from the huge pit underground, forming a huge human face in the air. Compared to before, this huge human face's figure had shrunk by almost half. At this moment, its mouth was wide open, and its eyes were filled with resentment and ruthlessness as it looked in the direction Luo Qingtong and the others left. Chapter 2206. However, there were no more obstacles in front of Luo Qingtong and the others. Their figures flitted quickly. In addition, Luo Qingtong had the life and death sword, which could threaten the wills of those extraterrestrial experts. Every time the girl attacked the back, she would slow down the speed of the giant face's pursuit. Luo Qingtong and the others were getting farther and farther away, and the distance between them was getting bigger and bigger. That huge face suddenly let out a long howl, and then let out a sharp roar. Boom, boom, boom. After hearing its roar, the white bones that were chasing Luo Qingtong and the others suddenly trembled violently. Then, boom. Their bodies exploded into pieces in an instant. In the distance, several sect experts among Luo Qingtong and the others were surprised when they saw this scene. What's going on? How did these white bones explode into pieces in an instant? They were surprised and wanted to inform Luo Qingtong, but when they glanced behind them, they took a deep breath. My God! They were shocked and aghast as they watched the broken white bones in front of them recombine in an instant, turning into a giant white bone that stood between heaven and earth. This white bone was almost the collection of the white bones from before. It stood between heaven and earth like a huge mountain. The wills of those extraterrestrial experts gathered and rushed toward the giant white bone with a roar in an instant. At the sight of this, the experts from the various sects widened their eyes in shock. They watched the giant face rush into the white bone, and then there was a violent burst of cracking sounds. The giant white bone moved. Boom. The soaring aura almost broke through the intense black fog that shrouded the land of the deceased immortals. They looked at the terrifying white bone that came to life in an instant, and its aura and strength soared in an instant. The sect experts who saw this scene were almost scared out of their wits. Luo? Miss Luo. Their voices were sharp and shrill, and they cried out almost instantly. Hearing their voices, Luo Qingtong and the others who were rushing in front turned around and saw the scene behind them. Suddenly, everyone's pupils contracted violently. Oh my God! The Xuanhuan sect master and the others stared at the colossal, mountain-like skeleton and the terrifying presence that surged from it. Immediately their hearts chilled. How could this be? Despair filled the faces of the Heaven Yuan sect master and the others. Even Luo Qingtong's expression was grave. Exalted realm. Looking at the bursts of aura coming from the white skeleton. The tyrannical aura it emitted made Luo Qingtong and the others, who were thousands of meters away, feel suffocated. Purple Venerable Realm Expert. Looking at the rays of light that suddenly blossomed from the white skeleton, the deep purple marks within it were extremely dense, and almost pierced the eyes of the Xuanhuan sect master and the others. Those rays of light rippled out from behind the skeleton. A total of 9 halos appeared behind the white skeleton. Level 9 Expert. Purple Venerable Realm 9. When the Xuanhuan sect master and the others saw the purple marks on the white skeleton, they were already incomparably shocked. When they saw the 9 huge rays of light behind the white skeleton, they couldn't control themselves. A purple venerable expert was already terrifying enough. Chapter 2207. Amethyst Elder's Ninth Realm? Luo Qingtong looked at the skeleton that seemed to stand between the heavens and earth. This skeleton gave her a feeling of extreme danger and dread. It was the same feeling Luo Qingtong had when she first crossed over to this strange world and met the heaven-connecting beast. At that time, if she hadn't met Xianxia and borrowed his strength to deal with the heaven-connecting beast, Luo Qingtong wouldn't have been able to escape from the heaven-connecting beast's clutches. And at this moment, this skeleton actually gave her the same feeling. And this was in a situation where her strength had already risen to the Saint Realm. Just how strong was this skeleton? Amethyst Elder's Ninth Realm? Just what kind of boundary was that? As if he knew the question in Luo Qingtong's heart, the Sky Branch sect master said with a trembling voice, Miss Luo, you've just reached the Saint Realm and you haven't been in the hidden world for long. Do you know the divisions of strength above the Saint Realm? The truth is that we don't know much, but we do know the general divisions of the realms. The Sky Branch sect master said. As the top echelons of a first-class sect, a Saint Realm powerhouse was the final step of the Saint Realm. They naturally knew more than the average person. After all, they had a certain chance of breaking through the barrier of the Saint Realm in the future and successfully breaking through. Thus, they still had some basic knowledge of the Saint Realm. Above the Saint Realm there are 7 levels. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple. Each level is further divided into 9 realms, from the 1st to the 9th. Now, this skeleton has the strength of an Amethyst Elder's 9th realm. As the Sky Branch sect master spoke to hear, his voice was filled with a deep sense of despair. As far as they knew, the Amethyst Elder's 9th realm was the highest boundary of the Saint Realm. It was said that a powerhouse at this level could already dominate a region in the outer realms. It was an existence that could suppress an entire star field. The Sky Branch sect master and the others only knew that such a powerhouse existed in this world from the ancient texts of their sects and the words of the Star Alliance's palace hall. But they had never seen one before. After all, the true Spill continent was a remote and barren place. It was impossible for a normal High Lord realm powerhouse to come here, much less a supreme powerhouse like a Purple High Lord. Only a high realm powerhouse like the Star Alliance's temple master would be sent to guard the true Spill continent. After hearing his words, Luo Qingtong frowned. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. 7 levels? Then why didn't I see any colors on the Star Alliance Hall Masters? Luo Qingtong was referring to the body of the Star Alliance Hall Master and Zhuge Shirsan. She could understand why Zhuge Shirsan had turned into a yin corpse. After all, he only retained a trace of the power of the Venerable Realm after his death. It was normal for him to not have a colored halo. But why didn't the Star Alliance Hall Master have any? Luo Qingtong had seen the Star Alliance Palace Master fight outside the land of the deceased immortals. That's because before the Red Venerable Realm, there is another level, and that is the Entering Venerable Realm. The Sky Branch Sect Master said, the so-called Entering Venerable Realm is the level of power that has just entered the Venerable Realm. He bitterly smiled and said, at that time the Venerable Realm powerhouse has already come into contact with the power of immortal spiritual energy and can absorb it into their attacks. But they haven't completely comprehended it yet. Chapter 2208. At that time, the Venerable Realm expert would be a true Venerable Realm expert. The deeper one's understanding of the immortal chi, the stronger the energy used, and the deeper the radiance around the Venerable Realm expert. From red to purple, that's how it came to be. And purple is the meaning of the purple chi from the east. It's the strongest Venerable Realm expert. And the 9th level of the Amethyst Venerable Realm is the peak of the Amethyst Venerable Realm. As the Heavenly Branch Sect Master spoke, his face was filled with disappointment. Before they broke through to the Venerable Realm, they often fantasized about the strength of the Amethyst Venerable Realm. How terrifying and unbridled would it be? But now that they saw the 9th level of the Amethyst Venerable Realm, they couldn't feel happy at all. Because the strength of this skeleton had reached such a terrifying level, they didn't have any hope of escaping. Even if Luo Qingtong had displayed all kinds of powerful and unpredictable abilities in front of them, they still couldn't escape. Furthermore, the giant claw that had just descended from the sky had pressed the huge face to the ground, displaying an absolute and domineering power. But Little Pig had already fainted. No matter how powerful Luo Qingtong was, no matter how many tricks she had, it was impossible for her to cross the huge gap between the Venerable Realm and the 9th level of the Amethyst Venerable Realm. The gap between the two realms wasn't something that could be bridged with ordinary talent and strength. When everyone thought of this, their hearts were filled with indescribable despair. They were about to escape from this forbidden area, but they didn't expect the foreign experts to gather their wills and have such a trick up their sleeves. They were actually able to condense all those skeletons together, turning them into an indomitable skeleton and attaching themselves to it. How many foreign experts had died in the land of the fallen immortals? When these people's corpses were condensed together and attached to the huge face, it wasn't surprising that they could reach the 9th level of the Amethyst Venerable Realm. Everyone's hearts were filled with despair, and the foreign experts' wills in the skeleton were also filled with anger. They hadn't used this trick before because once their bodies were completely condensed and fused with the skeleton, they couldn't be separated anymore. They couldn't scatter and gather like before when they formed the huge face. These foreign experts' wills also had their own selfish motives. They wanted to separate from the sector beast and obtain its flesh, blood, and the power of law origin to reconstruct their bodies. They didn't want to fuse with each other. But now, after they entered the skeleton, they could no longer separate. Not only that, if this skeleton was destroyed, they would also be destroyed. They couldn't rely on the aura of the land of the fallen immortals to be reborn. But no matter how unwilling they were, seeing that Luo Qingtong and the others were about to escape this forbidden zone, they could only compromise. Even if they fused into the same body and shared the same soul with countless consciousnesses, it was still better than letting Luo Qingtong and the others escape from this forbidden zone and completely losing track of the sector beast. Plus, once he escapes, she will find a way to destroy the land of the deceased immortals. She will never let him go again. With this thought in mind, the extraterrestrial experts shattered all the white bones and condensed them into a giant skeleton. Chapter 2209. Boom. When the huge skeleton's aura soared into the sky, it had already swept into the land of the deceased immortals. The Star Alliance Temple Master and the others who were rushing towards the Forbidden Zone were indescribably surprised. They watched as the black fog around them all rushed towards the direction of the Forbidden Zone. And there, waves of majestic and terrifying aura were being emitted. The power contained in those auras caused the expressions of the Star Alliance Temple Masters to change greatly. Temple Master? The people in the Star Alliance Temple Master looked at the Star Alliance Temple Master with bewildered expressions. The power of those auras was too domineering and overbearing, and they vaguely gave them an extremely terrifying feeling. It had to be known that there was no lack of venerable realm powerhouses among the Star Alliance Temple Masters, but they were not as powerful as the Star Alliance Temple Master. Now that they felt the huge power coming from the center of the Forbidden Zone, they were shocked and frightened. What the hell was going on? How could there be such a shocking and terrifying aura in this low-level True Spill continent? After the Star Alliance Temple Master felt the terrifying power in the Forbidden Zone, his expression changed greatly. But soon, he calmed down and looked at the direction of the Forbidden Zone with even more fanaticism. "What are you afraid of?" he coldly shouted. "Let's continue." The Star Alliance Temple Master was excited to the extreme. These auras were obviously the collective thoughts of those powerhouses from outside the domain. The stronger the auras they emitted, the more powerful the sector beast was. They had to do this in order to deal with it. Under such circumstances, how could he not be excited? The stronger the sector beast was, the stronger his strength would be after he obtained it in the future. Haha. The Star Alliance Palace Master laughed and rushed towards the forbidden area in front of him at an even faster speed than before. The people from the Star Alliance Temple behind him were very confused, but when they saw the Star Alliance Temple Master's actions, they looked at each other in dismay. Finally, they followed the Star Alliance Temple Master and rushed towards the Forbidden Zone. Not far in front of them, Xianxia and the others, who had concealed themselves and were also rushing towards the Forbidden Zone, suddenly changed their expressions when they sensed the aura coming from the Forbidden Zone in front of them. "Master! It's Amethyst Elder's level 9 power." Unlike the Star Alliance Palace Master and the others, Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others sensed the terrifying power emitted by the huge skeleton almost immediately. They sucked in a breath of cold air in their hearts. Amethyst Elder's level 9 power. My God, what did Evil Doctor and the others do? They actually forced the collective thoughts of those powerhouses from outside the domain to emit such a terrifying power? Just as their voices rang out, a black stream of light exploded in front of them and then disappeared in front of them. Yi Qianxian's eyes were cold, and he rushed towards the Forbidden Zone almost instantly. If it weren't for the special geographical environment here that prevented him from tearing space, Yi Qianxian would have done so immediately and appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. Amethyst Elder's level 9 power was definitely not something that woman could deal with. It was the same even if she had contracted the sector beast. Chapter 22:10. As for the newly born realm beast, it was still far from being invincible. The world lands it carried had yet to be nurtured. Even if it shared its innate ability to control the origin of laws with Luo Qingtong, it could only increase her strength by a little. It was far from reaching the level where she could deal with the Amethyst Elder's level 9 strength. Damn it, the combined consciousness of those powerhouses from outside the star domain had actually reached such a level. What did that woman do to them in the Forbidden Land? Yi Qianren's heart was filled with pride and anger. He was proud of Luo Qingtong's extraordinary strength and ability. He was angry that this woman didn't know how to rely on him more. Couldn't she just obediently wait for him to come over? Just as Yi Qianren and the others were rushing towards the Forbidden Zone. Bang! In the Forbidden Land, the giant skeleton suddenly moved. Countless distorted faces screamed from within its body. Then, it controlled the giant skeleton and fiercely rushed towards Luo Qingtong and the others. The giant bone sword in its hand rose into the sky. The boundless power shook the entire land of the fallen immortals, and even the entire hidden world, to the point where it began to tremble. The 9th level Amethyst Elder's strength was already enough to look down on a star field. This was also because this power was displayed in the land of the fallen immortals. The land of the fallen immortals was in the hidden world and belonged to the True Spill continent. As for the True Spill continent, as a 9th level continent, it didn't have any celestial spiritual energy. Otherwise, this skeleton's attack alone was enough to shatter the entire True Spill continent and even the hidden world. Countless living beings would die in anguish. This was the strength of an Amethyst Elder. However, without the existence of celestial spiritual energy, the 9th level Amethyst Elder's strength wasn't that strong. Even so, it wasn't something that anyone below the Amethyst Elder realm could resist. Not to mention Luo Qingtong and the others. They weren't even in the Amethyst Elder realm. Bang bang bang. The giant sword light instantly shattered the void and tore the entire land of the fallen immortals into pieces. Every fragment was enough to kill anyone below the Amethyst Elder realm. Rumble. Along with this attack, the black aura in the countless forbidden zones surged, instantly turning into vapor and liquid. It was like a surging tide that came crashing down. Bang. The ancient heavenly spirit tree above Luo Qingtong and the others exploded into pieces in an instant. Its body shrunk rapidly until it turned into a black seed. Obviously, it couldn't withstand the impact of the black aura. The moment the ancient sky spirit was shattered, the people from the outermost sects cried out in agony one after another. Their bodies were completely melted by the thick black fog that was rolling over, and they disappeared. Seeing this scene, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly narrowed. 9-layered exquisite pagoda. Luo Qingtong shouted. In an instant, countless auras from the pagoda were drawn out by her and enveloped everyone around her. The aura from the 9-layered exquisite pagoda fiercely rushed out, and the black aura that was rushing towards them was pushed away. But this was only temporary. Without the support of the ancient heavenly spirit tree, the black aura would come back again. The aura from the 9-layered exquisite pagoda that Luo Qingtong could draw out wasn't endless. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.